When I met Aaron, it felt like stepping out of a storm and finding solid ground under my feet for the first time in years. I'd just come out of a long, emotionally exhausting relationship with a man who treated love like a transaction, keeping score, measuring affection, withholding kindness like it was a reward to be earned. I'd spent too long trying to fix something that had always been broken, convincing myself that loyalty meant staying no matter how much it hurt. So when Aaron came into my life, he felt like light. He wasn't flashy or over the top. He didn't sweep me off my feet in some grand Hollywood way. Instead, he made me feel seen, safe, important, like my thoughts mattered, like I mattered. We met at a community fundraiser, nothing fancy, just folding chairs and paper plates and lukewarm pasta, but we struck up a conversation that lasted until the janitor was locking the doors. I remember the way he laughed, deep and unguarded, like he didn't mind being a little awkward. I liked that. I liked him. He told me right away that he was divorced, that he had a son, Ben, who meant everything to him. Most guys would have tiptoed around that, afraid it might scare me off, but Aaron wore fatherhood like armor, not as a burden, but as proof of who he was. Responsible, devoted. I admired it. And when I finally met Ben, it all made sense. He was a gentle boy, soft-voiced, thoughtful, and incredibly smart for his age. But there was also a fragility to him, a kind of quiet fear behind his eyes that made you want to protect him. I learned quickly that he had epilepsy, the kind that didn't always respond well to medication, the kind that meant living with constant vigilance. It didn't scare me off. If anything, it pulled me closer. I'd always dreamed of having a family, of creating a home filled with warmth and stability, the kind I never really had growing up. And with Aaron and Ben, it felt like maybe I'd finally found that chance. We moved in together within 8 months. It wasn't impulsive, we planned carefully. Talked about finances, routines, how to ease Ben into the transition. I even redecorated the spare room to feel more like a bedroom and less like a temporary space. I wanted Ben to know he belonged. Aaron proposed just before Christmas. It wasn't a big production, no crowd, no photographer hiding in the bushes. Just us on the couch, the smell of cinnamon candles in the air, and a simple, trembling question. Will you marry me? I said yes before he even finished the sentence. It felt right. Like the next step in a story that was finally going somewhere good. But slowly, quietly, little things began to unravel. Aaron never really talked about his ex-wife, Melissa. When her name came up, he'd stiffen, deflect, and change the subject. I told myself it was just old wounds. Not everyone likes revisiting failed marriages. But then came the constant text from her. The middle-of-the-night phone calls. The little lies. Like how he told me Melissa was barely in the picture, yet she was always involved in decisions. Like how he said they only talked about Ben, yet I once overheard him laughing with her on the phone like they were sharing an inside joke. But I let it go. I told myself co-parenting was messy. That Aaron just wanted to keep things smooth for Ben's sake. That he wasn't lying. He was protecting me from unnecessary drama. Besides, I was already deeply involved in Ben's care. I rearranged my entire life to accommodate his medical needs. I learned to read the subtle signs of an oncoming seizure before he could say a word. I memorized every dosage, every warning label. I became his advocate, his emergency contact, his safe person. And I loved it. I loved him. Aaron told me often how grateful he was. How he didn't know how he'd managed without me. How I was holding their fragile little world together. But what I didn't know, what I never could have imagined, was that while I was giving everything I had, he was hiding the ugliest truth behind my back. And when it finally surfaced, it tore everything apart. It started on a Thursday. Aaron was already acting strange that morning. He was quieter than usual, distracted, pacing around the kitchen like he was trying to rehearse something. His phone kept lighting up with messages he ignored, but not the way you ignore spam. No, this was the kind of silence that comes from fear. Everything okay? I asked as I packed Ben's lunch for school. He blinked, clearly startled by my voice. Yeah, it's just Melissa. Of course. He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. There's something going on. She's in the hospital. Something with her kidneys, they think. My stomach dropped. Not because I cared about Melissa. I barely knew the woman. But because I knew what that meant. You're going to her, I said flatly. He nodded. I have to. She doesn't have anyone else, and Ben's still too young to handle something like this alone. She asked me to come. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched him. Something felt wrong, off. The story made sense, but his face didn't match it. He looked tense, yes, but not panicked. Not like a man whose co-parent might be dying in a hospital bed. Still, I forced myself to believe him. How long will you be gone? I asked. Just the weekend, he said. I booked a flight. I'll be back Sunday night. I didn't argue. I just nodded and kissed his cheek. But as soon as the door closed behind him, I stood frozen in our hallway, holding Ben's backpack, a strange, sinking weight building in my chest. By Friday night, things were already unraveling. Ben had a minor seizure. I followed the protocol like I'd been trained, stayed calm, got his medication into him. But something about it shook me deeper this time. Maybe it was the isolation. Maybe it was that I suddenly felt like I wasn't just parenting. I was abandoned with someone else's child. I tried calling Aaron to let him know what had happened. No answer. I texted. Nothing. By Saturday afternoon, I was calling hospitals. Quietly. Carefully. Just trying to confirm if Melissa had even been admitted anywhere. She hadn't. Not in our city. Not in the next one. Not anywhere I could find. I remember sitting on the edge of the bathtub, phone clutched in my hand, my other arm wrapped around a now sleeping Ben, and feeling the air leave my lungs like I'd been punched. Because in that moment, I realized something horrifying. There was no emergency. There was no hospital. And Aaron hadn't flown across the country to take care of his ex-wife. He had lied. He had disappeared and left me, alone, responsible for his medically fragile son, under false pretenses. And I had no idea where he was. But I was going to find out. That night, I barely slept. Ben had another seizure around 2 a.m., and I stayed up holding him for hours afterward, whispering calming words, rocking him until his tiny body stopped trembling. But my mind wasn't calm. It was storming. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how bad it was yet. When the sun rose, I was done waiting. I searched the apartment. Every drawer, every email, every credit card charge I could find. I knew I was crossing lines, violating trust, but Aaron had already bulldozed that trust the second he walked out the door. And then I found it. A flight confirmation. Not to the hospital city he'd claimed, but to Miami. First class. 2 tickets. Booked the day before he left. My heart slammed against my ribs. I dug deeper. The names were there. His and hers. Melissa. Not just a trip. A vacation. With his ex-wife. I felt sick. I ran to the sink and vomited. The kind of gut-wrenching betrayal that doesn't just hit your chest, it seeps into your bones, into your skin. I had been here, holding the child he claimed to love, keeping him safe, caring for him like my own. And they were sipping cocktails on a beach in Florida? There were photos too. Of course there were. Instagram wasn't private. Melissa had tagged him, unknowingly. Maybe, but there they were, smiling, drinks in hand, sunset behind them. Emergency medical situation, he said. No one else to take care of her, he said. They were celebrating, laughing, her arms around his shoulders. And me? I was knee-deep in medical records, thermometers, seizure logs, and children's Tylenol, trying to keep their son breathing. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. And something darker too, the realization that I had never truly known who Aaron was. That the man who proposed to me, who cried when I said yes, who swore I completed their family, was capable of weaponizing my compassion. He used me. He used Ben. And he thought I'd never find out. But he was wrong. Because when Aaron returned Sunday night, tan, smiling, suitcase in hand, I was ready for him. He walked through the door like nothing had happened. Hair sun-kissed, shirt slightly wrinkled but still crisp. He even had the audacity to bring back a tiny souvenir for Ben. A keychain shaped like a palm tree. Hey, he said, like it was a normal day. How was everything? I didn't say a word at first. Just stared at him. Let the silence press in like thunderclouds. He furrowed his brow, probably expecting a warm hug or at least a kiss on the cheek. When I didn't move, his smile faltered. Everything okay? That was when I reached behind me, picked up the printout from the counter, the flight receipt with both their names on it, and slid it across the table toward him. You forgot your emergency hospital paperwork, I said coldly. His face blanched. I'd never seen him pale like that. The tan drained from his skin as fast as the lies drained from his mouth. He opened it, closed it, tried to summon a defense, but I beat him to it. Miami? Aaron? First class? 2 tickets? Her name. Still, he said nothing. He knew. Do you know what happened while you were drinking mojitos on the beach? I snapped. Your son had 2 seizures. 2. I had to inject his emergency meds alone. I sat on the bathroom floor with him in my lap thinking he might die, and you were sunbathing. He started to say something, maybe an apology, maybe another lie, but I was done. Don't speak. I cut him off. Don't insult me with whatever half-baked excuse you think I'm desperate enough to believe. His eyes flicked toward Ben's room. Please, he muttered. Can we not do this right now? He's asleep. No. We are doing this right now. Because I didn't sign up to raise your son while you sneak off with the woman you swore you were done with. Then the truth finally spilled from him, slippery and gutless. It was just a getaway. A chance to reconnect. For Ben's sake. I laughed, cold, bitter. Don't you dare use that boy as your shield. You don't reconnect in a swimsuit with piña coladas and poolside selfies. You lied. You abandoned him. And you left me behind to clean up the mess. He rubbed his hands over his face. I didn't think you'd find out. That's the problem, Aaron, I hissed. You never thought I deserved the truth. He didn't fight back. He didn't cry. He just stood there, silent, defeated. And that's when I realized something brutal. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was just sorry that I caught him. I didn't sleep that night. Aaron passed out on the couch, probably assuming the silence between us was a ceasefire. It wasn't. I spent hours pacing the kitchen, alternating between fury and heartbreak. I looked at the photos on our fridge, Ben's drawings, our engagement party snapshot, the calendar filled with color-coded reminders for his medication refills and school events. All things I managed while Aaron vacationed in another reality. By morning, I made my decision. I would leave, but before I could start packing, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring once. Twice. My instinct told me to ignore it, but something made me pick up. Hello. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. Soft. A little too calm. Hi, Isla. This is Melissa. For a second, I said nothing. My breath caught in my throat. I know this is awkward, she continued, but I think we should talk. Talk, I repeated slowly. About what? You and your surprise honeymoon with my fiancé. There was a pause. Not guilty. Just calculated. I'm not calling to fight, she said. I'm calling because you deserve to know the full truth. About Aaron. About all of it. I rolled my eyes. You are the truth. But she ignored the jab. He told me you were okay with the trip, she said flatly. That you insisted we go for Ben's emotional well-being. That you wanted us to try to repair things, to be a united front. He made it sound like you were practically the one who booked the flights. I almost dropped the phone. You're lying, I whispered. No, she said, I'm not. And then she sent screenshots. Aaron's messages to her. Dozens. In them, he called me clingy, unstable, not ready to be a stepmom. He said I hated co-parenting, that I resented Melissa, that I begged him to go and sort things out with her, for Ben's sake. He even called our engagement a mistake he didn't know how to undo. I felt like the room had been knocked sideways. Why are you showing me this? I finally asked. Melissa hesitated. Because I was lied to too, she said. He's been playing both sides. He told me he wasn't even living with you anymore. Said it was just temporary, for Ben's sake. I sat down, trembling. So what now? I asked. That's up to you, she said. But if you're done with him, and I think you are, you should know CPS has already been watching him. I got a visit last month. A warning. Something about inconsistency in care, missed appointments. And if you got left with Ben without legal custody. Her voice dropped. You might want to get ahead of that before they knock on your door too. After Melissa hung up, I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall as her words echoed in my mind. You might want to get ahead of that. CPS. I hadn't even thought about it. Not until now. I had no legal rights to Ben. I wasn't his mother. I wasn't even his stepmother. But I had been the one taking care of him for days, administering his medication, handling his seizures, making sure he ate, slept, stayed safe. And Aaron? He'd vanished without leaving a single signed document behind. I didn't even have a notarized note in case something happened. If CPS found out, if Ben had another episode while I was alone with him, it wouldn't be Aaron who got investigated. It would be me. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called them myself. The social worker who answered sounded surprised. I told her everything. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. I just laid it all out. The trip, the lie, the seizures, the fake emergency, the emotional manipulation, the absence of any legal guardianship on my part. To her credit, she didn't sound judgmental. Just quiet. Listening. Thank you for your honesty, she said finally. And for doing what you did for that boy. We'll be following up shortly. But in the meantime, please keep him safe. I hung up with a strange combination of relief and dread. I had told the truth. But now it was out there. No more pretending. No more waiting for Aaron to do the right thing. That night, I sat Ben down on the couch. He was wearing mismatched socks and holding his favorite stuffed turtle, the one he squeezed when he was nervous. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "We need to talk for a minute." He looked up, his big eyes blinking. "Is Dad back?" "He is," I said carefully. "But some things are changing." I didn't tell him everything. He was still just a kid. But I let him know I wouldn't be living here much longer, and that I was going to make sure someone took care of him properly. That I wouldn't just disappear like his parents always seemed to do. Ben didn't cry. Instead, he leaned over and hugged me tightly, tighter than he ever had before, and said something that broke me in half. "You're the only one who remembers the turtle needs to sleep too. That little stuffed toy. The one I always tucked under his arm before bed. The one his parents had long forgotten meant anything to him." I cried in the bathroom after he went to sleep, because I realized something else that night. Even if I walked away from Aaron, I couldn't just walk away from Ben, not without trying to give him something no one else ever had. Stability, safety, a voice in his corner. So I made one more call, this time to a lawyer. The lawyer I spoke to specialized in emergency guardianship cases. At first, he was cautious. "You're not married. You have no blood relation. No formal agreement from the father." "No," I said quietly. "Just proof that he left his son with me under false pretenses, and that I was the only one taking care of him." He didn't respond immediately, but I could hear the gears turning. "Bring everything. Photos, medical logs, texts, anything that shows you were acting as this boy's primary caregiver. And do it fast. If CPS gets involved first, it'll be much harder." I spent the next 24 hours gathering every scrap of evidence I had. Screenshots of Aaron's lies. A calendar of Ben's medication routine in my handwriting. Notes from his teachers addressed to me. The contact list where doctors called my number first. Even the emergency seizure plan I had laminated and posted on the fridge. I filed the petition for temporary emergency guardianship the next morning. And that was when Aaron finally snapped out of his selfish haze. He stormed into the apartment like a man betrayed him, the one who cheated, lied, abandoned his child. And yet somehow, in his twisted logic, I was the villain for trying to take his son. "You're not his mom," he shouted. "You think you can just walk in and steal him from me?" I didn't yell back. I just stood there, steady, calm, holding the legal papers in my hand. "I'm not stealing him," I said. "I'm saving him. From you." He threatened lawyers. He threatened court. He even, for a moment, tried to guilt me. "Ben needs his parents together." "No," I said, voice steady. "Ben needs parents who show up, who don't vanish without warning, who don't fake hospital emergencies to take secret vacations. He needs someone who puts him first." And then, to my complete surprise, Melissa backed me up. She submitted a letter to the court, a statement confirming that Aaron had lied to both of us, that he'd used Ben as leverage, that he'd left their child in the hands of someone else without informing her, without documenting anything, and without even bothering to check in. I'll never forget her final sentence. "I may not like Isla, but she's the only person in my son's life who has ever treated him like a person, not a burden." That changed everything. The judge granted temporary guardianship pending a full hearing. Aaron was stunned into silence. And Ben? When I picked him up from school and told him we'd be okay, that I wasn't leaving, and no one could take him away from me without a fight, he didn't say anything. He just whispered, "I knew you'd stay." The courtroom was quiet. Ben sat outside with a caseworker, coloring. He didn't know the weight of what was happening behind those doors, how strangers in suits were deciding whether the woman who tucked him in every night was allowed to stay. Aaron was smug at first. Clean-shaven, polished suit. His lawyer threw around words like parental rights and unauthorized custody. But everything changed when the judge started asking him questions. "Where were you during your son's seizures? Why did you leave him in the care of someone without legal documentation? Why did you lie about a medical emergency?" He stumbled. He backtracked. He blamed stress. But the evidence was too overwhelming. Melissa's statement, my medical records, the CPS report confirming his neglect, the school letters praising my involvement. In contrast, my lawyer spoke with quiet authority. "Your Honor," he said, "my client did not act out of self-interest. She acted out of love. When the child's own parents abandoned him, she stepped in, not for money, not for recognition, but because she couldn't bear to see him suffer. That is what parenting looks like." The judge didn't need long. "Temporary guardianship," she ruled, "is hereby extended for 12 months, at which point a permanent custody review will be held. In the meantime, full physical and medical decision-making authority remains with Ms. Isla Winters. I couldn't breathe. It was done. Aaron left the courtroom in silence. He didn't even look at me. Melissa simply gave me a nod, not approval, not affection, just acknowledgement. That was enough. When I walked into the hallway and saw Ben still coloring, he looked up and smiled. "Can we go home now?" he asked. I knelt beside him. "Yes, sweetheart. We can." Months passed. Life wasn't instantly perfect, court check-ins, therapy sessions, adjusting to the weight of official parenthood, but there was peace. Real, warm, gentle peace. Ben started calling me Mom one night without fanfare. Just said it in passing while asking for more apple slices. I cried in the kitchen for 20 minutes. And now, a year later, as I sit on our couch with his head resting on my lap, watching cartoons and laughing like a kid who finally feels safe, I know something with every fiber of my being. Blood doesn't make a parent. Love does. Presence does. And I will never, ever leave him wondering who's in his corner again. Because I may not have been the one who gave him life. But I am the one who will give him everything else.